Alright, and welcome to the next episode. Unbelievably, after a year or two, I believe I have finally fixed my microphone from the last time I checked, because I did sound recorder and I was checking. It's like, man, I think I know what the problem is. Let me tell everybody real quick. So, in my previous videos for the past year or two, my microphone has been so shitty. It's like, man, I just figured it was just a shitty microphone, and it's like, man, I can't believe it's such a shitty microphone. It's like, I paid $60 or $80 for it on Amazon, and it's the brand is called CAP, and it's a U37. So, and I went and looked it up on the website, and I'm all looking at the stats because I'm all trying to figure out, man, maybe I need to download a driver for it, because somebody on Counter-Strike said, man, maybe you need to download a driver. So it's like, man, let me go look up the website. I went and looked up the website, and they're like, oh, amazing, high-quality acoustic microphone. I'm all thinking, man, this microphone is supposed to be so high quality for singing and high performance, but it's like it's like literally the shittiest microphone I've ever had in my life, and I could literally go buy a $5 microphone that's better, right? So, oh wait, no, I need to double check because I disabled it in my Microsoft, but I don't know if I disabled it over here, but it should be good. We'll check at the end of the movie. Hopefully I don't have to re-record everything. It's kind of a good thing that I am going to redo this video, because my first video, anytime I first make a video, if it's the first time I go over something, I just start fucking blowing up and raging out and getting crazy with, like, just raging out, pissed. So, my first video, I uploaded it about 3 hours ago. There was nothing wrong with it. I liked it, but the only problem I don't like with my videos is when you go listen to it, it's like fucking the microphone is so bad. It's like you wouldn't even want to listen to it, and it's like, how the fuck is my mic that bad? So after I realized that I believe I fixed the microphone, it's like, oh shit, I'm gonna go re-record this video, because man, that fucking sound quality is fucking horrible. Okay, so this video is going to be the revelation of God, and the great mysteries behind the concept and abnormal realities of these sorts of circumstances. Okay, so when we're dealing with the acronym of God, we're dealing with something we can automatically start to imagine. First thing everybody thinks, God. They think an all-powerful being that can create the whole universe, right? Because that's what God is supposedly represents. So, generally speaking, maybe not everybody kind of thinks that right away, but I would imagine that's what it should look like for most people if you're actually kind of looking at, well, what the fuck does it have to be? What the fuck could it not be? Or what the fuck does it have to be, right? So it's like, this is something, like, whether or not you really know about it, you can still kind of deliberate and break it down and simplify and analyze and come up with a formula, a solution, because everything kind of can be understood and broken down. So it wasn't until I was like, breaking this stuff down for so long and that I finally started figuring it out. So yeah, in my last video that I made, I opened up the video like literally blasting everybody, like, get ready everybody, you need to all buckle in your seatbelts, because we are all going in for some motherfucking Armageddon, and I was just fucking ranting, blowing up on shit. So I think that now that I went over it that first time, I think it's going to come out a little bit more clean, and not so spammy. So now what I was realizing is, okay, one of our biggest dilemmas and debates, arguments, everyone has, or even, question, is, God. And we can question all sorts of different angles and aspects revolving around this. And it's not so simple to just, be one general, simple thing, right? Well, not for everybody. Now, the biggest thing that most people could agree with is, well, what would you imagine that God would be capable of? How would you define that someone or something that would be God? What would classify someone or something to be a God? Well, we can kind of estimate that and kind of take a shot in the dark. Well, okay, what would God have to be, or what would you kind of expect it God to be? Well, let's see. There's a few things going on here with God. One of the biggest things, and one of the most fascinating and most amazing discoveries that I have come to realize is, I'd say probably maybe first or second to take note of God is, well, let's say first, one, he always existed. People do argue, well, you can't just always exist. Now we're taking on the approach of, well, that must be what is expected. So now we must be able to prove that it is possible to always exist if that were to be the case. If someone or something were to always exist, why not? Why couldn't someone or something always exist? So when somebody says, oh, he can't just always exist, that's a religion. You don't really know that unless you know that. You can expect that. That's what you expect. And remember, expectations can be very deceptive and delusional. For example, with casinos, 1% is very deceptive and delusional. And then when you're going to come down into breaking in, levels of God, when we're talking, there's way too much room to be putting out theory that, God can't always exist. Well, first of all, if God were to exist, well, then he would have to always exist. So now somebody's trying to say that God doesn't have to always exist because he can always exist, because we know that something or somebody can always exist. Okay, so where did anybody ever get the idea that something cannot always exist? Remember, something can be anything, right? Well, as far as we know, nothing always existed. You can't rule that out. That's space. Space itself always existed, forever and infinite. Do you see a brick wall out in space where it's like, hey, this is the border, this is the end, this is the edge of the universe? No. Nothing always existed. Always existed. Forever. Infinitely. So when if someone's going to try to argue to me that somebody or something cannot always exist, they're already incorrect. How can they argue in their theory that something cannot always exist when we already know that space itself had to have always existed and did always exist, and how can anybody prove otherwise? You can't prove otherwise that space didn't always exist. Nobody can prove that space did not always exist. You know why nobody can prove that space did not always exist? Because it always existed, because it had to. Now we're starting to realize, well, if something always existed, well, then it had to be. That's just the way it has to be. So now we can't rule that out. We cannot rule that out. Like, okay, one, what would make somebody qualified to be God? Always exist. I would say that's probably one of the most important part of the formulas to attribute to what a God could be, or is, or should be, or will be. Always exist. So, I argue for anybody, one of your first things on your list of what you should attribute, of what you should expect that God could be, or should be, or is going to be, well, if he does exist, well, then he had to always exist. That's number one. Number two, another big argument about God is infinity. Yeah, that's what everybody's so confused about. Well, what's infinity? How can it be infinite? That doesn't make sense. But that's not what number two is. Number two, I want everybody to think about it. I don't want to spoil it. Think about it. So one, God always exists. It's easy. What's another thing that God has to be able to do? Besides, fix everything, right? Of course, yeah. Oh, he's supposed to fix everything. He's supposed to fucking... Why the fuck isn't he down here making sure everybody's fucking not fighting and getting into wars? That's another part of the subject and the story. Now, the second one on my list of what we should expect out of God, if there are, well, shouldn't he know everything? Okay, so number two, he knows everything. Knows everything. He always existed. And he always existed. And he knows everything. Doesn't matter how he knows everything. If he knows everything, that's all there is to it. Then he knows everything. Nothing can change that. So we don't attribute that to anything else. We just look for, well, he would have to know everything. That's what God has to be. So the two biggest things to look for and expect, aside from, infinity, is he always existed, and he knows everything. So people are like, okay, something can't always exist. Boom, we already proved they're wrong about that. We already know that space always existed. You can't say that something can't always exist when we already know that something already fucking does always exist. Two, he knows everything. Most people try to argue, well, he can't know everything. That's a good argument to state, but one can't necessarily prove that he would not know everything unless you could actually prove he doesn't know everything. So now a better question to ask yourself is, how in the hell is it possible that God knows everything? That's where everything gets confusing. That's where the Big Bang, that's where everyone's minds are getting blown. Everyone's all fucking like getting their minds blown. They can't make sense of this shit. Nobody can make sense of this shit because there's no sense to be made of it. You cannot make sense of infinity. The only sense that you can make out of infinity is to understand and accept the fact that it's ongoing and never ends forever. Okay, never ending, forever, eternal. Add another. Always add another. You can always add another. That is infinity, continuous. There are different forms of infinity. If somebody is continuously annoying another person, that could be a form of infinity due to the circumstance of it being continuous. And that's what attributes the dynamic in that circumstance to something. Well, what is infinite? If it's just continuous. If it just keeps going on and 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 on. That's all it is. Okay. So everyone's so perplexed. Well, how does God know everything? That can't be possible. Well, that's a good question. All right. Well, now we kind of need to take a step back and look at the perspective. It doesn't really make sense. Well, how could somebody just spontaneously just always know everything, right? That's potentially what most people make sense out of, what they kind of attribute to what it is and has to be. And that's where they're like, they hit the road and they're like, dude, I cannot make sense of this. Okay. So I think most can agree. Well, most of us can agree, alright, that doesn't make sense that he's just spontaneously always fucking existed and just fucking always knew everything. Because that's just unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Well, you better start believing, because guess what? If the formula can be balanced, then the equation can be true. It can be real. Alright, so people that are like, there's no formula. It's negative. It's false. It's zero. Because it can be 1 or 0, on or off, true or false. They're like, no, not possible. Cannot be done. But they're forgetting, well, what if there's a formula? All we need is some sort of formula or some sort of explanation. And I have the formula. I know the formula. I figured out the formula. You know the whole saying how God made every man in his image, and this is what it kind of ties back into what I just revealed to you. Like, guys, I've been looking at this stuff and I figured it all out. And that's when I was realizing, holy shit, what if God was like that? Right? And then I realized, oh God, that is exactly. So what I propose to be the solution for the apocalypse and God and the revelation of God on how he knows everything. Because first of all, needing to prove that he always existed doesn't even matter anymore, because we already know that something can always exist, because we already know that space always existed, as far as that we know of. Alright, so boom, that's check. That's already true. We already know it's possible. Knows everything. Okay, well, let's think about it. Is that possible? How could it ever be possible for somebody or something to know everything? The answer's number 1 right there. Always existed. Guess what? Game over. Always existed. Boom. Guess what happens when you always exist? I'll tell you exactly what happens. When you always exist, what happens is 13 billion years ago, Alright, so 13 billion years ago, the Big Bang happened. Right? We got all this fucking shit blasting out at us. Everyone's all like, what in the fuck is that? Oh my god. It's all blasting the fuck out of there. No one can understand what the shit and fuck is that. And behold, 13 billion years ago, the creation of the universe. Alright, now let me explain it in a little bit further detail without being such a smartass. I don't mean to be. But 13 billion... I propose the solution. I propose the answer to what is going on. I figured it out. 13 billion years ago, God always existed. And 13 billion years ago, He figured everything out. I propose the solution to the universe, the creation of the universe, the existence of God. It's right in front of everyone. 13 billion years ago, God figured everything out. How did He figure everything out 13 billion years ago? Because He always existed. That's all He ever did, was figure everything out. How do you think somebody is just gonna fucking know everything without figuring everything out? So I propose the entire solution of why everyone is so confused is they need to understand that God Himself can change His mind, does change His mind. So throughout His infinite existence of always existing, He was still changing His mind, figuring things out. Though He was figuring things out, and it took Him forever to figure everything out, and that's the only way He figured everything out, is because He always existed, and the only way to figure everything out is you have to always exist, because you have to always figure everything out. So 13 billion years ago, God reached a point out of infinity where He figured everything out. Okay, so He's like, boom. It took me forever, but behold, it's Him. It's God Himself. He knows everything. So, yeah, that's what's going out. 13 billion years ago, He figured everything out. And the only way He figured everything out is because He always existed. So I realized, like, dude, that must be all He ever did, was just figure everything out. That's just what He does. He's a computer. And that's how He did it. Nobody really knows how the hell He's a computer or how the fuck He always existed. We just have to be thankful that that's the way it is, and that He's there, because for God's sake, dude, that is exactly the way it is and the way this is working. So yeah, so now you guys know the answer. Well, what's taking God forever? Why isn't He doing anything? Because He's leaving everybody alone. Because everybody needs to do the same thing that He had to do. He needed to be left alone to figure everything out. We needed to be left alone to figure everything out. Only unless you are left by yourself are you able to figure everything that you were capable of understanding out. So he had to draw the line. He's like, you guys are going to have to learn that without me here doing anything, if I don't do anything, and you guys want me to do nothing and leave everybody alone and give everybody their own space, the problem with God giving everybody their own space and leaving everybody alone is we had to figure it out and be left alone to figure out why that's a problem. Now, I'm sure it's becoming pretty obvious of why it's such a big problem, that if God are to leave everybody and everything alone, give them their own privacy. Hey, give us our own space. Fucking leave us the fuck alone. The problem is it's not possible for God to not straighten everything out and being able to sustain everything without being destroyed and going back to nothing, dying. So we had to make sure everybody understands. Guess what? If I don't exist, and if I'm not here, and if I leave everything alone, everything's gonna die. Because he is the one who created everything out of nothing. So when he's the one who created everything out of nothing, if he's not the one to sustain what was created, then it can't do anything else. There's nothing else for it to do. It'll go back to nothing. It'll all die. So that's what he had to reveal. It's like the only way for things to exist is if I create everything. If I'm there to sustain it. So nobody is authorized to be having that much of their own space. Okay, that's the problem, is wanting that much of your own space. That's too much of your own space. When you're in different galaxies needing that much space, now that's when we're going to Judgment Day. Judgment Day. I'm not even going to write that. I don't even know how to spell it. So, what Judgment Day is that's where when everything dies and goes back to nothing, guess what? The only way for there to be anything to ever exist is if somebody figures out how to create everything, or if somebody recreates everything, or if somebody fixes the problem. What do you think Judgment Day is? What do you think he's going to do? He's going to straighten shit out. He's going to fix the problem. He's going to fucking send people on their way. He's going to say, guess what, Johnny? You get your ass straight over there to Prison Block 4. 10,000 years, motherfucker. Don't even fucking look at me. Get your ass over there. Johnny, you get your ass over to the Emerald Palace. Alright, what else is there to say? There's more. What I was saying in the other video is that God himself, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm already going on for a long time. God himself cannot wage war on anybody or anything because he's all powerful, dude. There's no competition. He has an unfair advantage. So, the thing is, although God himself cannot wage war on Lucifer, that's the problem, is Lucifer's the one who started the war of, hey, give everybody their own space, leave us the fuck alone, let us see if we can fucking keep shit together and if it's gonna work out, and give us a fucking chance here, let's see what happens. Lo and behold, the whole time, Lucifer just fucking tried to get everybody down here by themselves, So they were all just sitting ducks so he can just go blasting their asses off. And all he was going to do was fucking bankrupt all of the universe. That's what the national debt is how it's just bankrupting everything every second. That's Lucifer. That's what he knows how to do. He figured out how to do that. Because why do you think God wanted to bust him and make sure that he couldn't fucking get away with it? Only because God figured everything out that Lucifer isn't going to be able to get away with it, because out of infinite amounts of simulations, and that's the only reason Lucifer's like, oh shit, I'm rolling the dice on this, because guess what, as soon as I got everybody in debt and I got all the fucking money, I own everything. And guess what, he's like, I'm going to own this whole fucking universe and God's going to have to pay me everything. And he's like, why do you think he's all power tripping and he thinks he's God and shit? Because he thinks as soon as fucking he bankrupts everybody and gets everybody's fucking money, that game over, God, you're going to have to pay me out. I got all the money. Because guess what? Whoever has the money is the one who can wage the war. That's the one who you got to be afraid of. And who do you think has all the fucking money down here? Why do you think everything's getting destroyed, going back to nothing? Everything's fucking dying. Lucifer. He's destroying this shit. He's challenging God. He's waged war with God. Although, like I had mentioned, God himself, he cannot wage war on anybody or anything because he has an unfair advantage. If he are to wage war on anybody or anything, that's a wrap. They are to go back to nothing for all eternity, to be dead for all eternity, and you're never going to hear nothing about that shit ever again. That's why he refuses to wage war, because he knows, like, all I gotta do is snap my motherfucking fingers and your ass is gone. Done. I'm not like that. I'm not just gonna fucking make a motherfucker disappear unless there's some sort of purpose or a reason for me to go kill somebody. That's what it means, because that's what he would potentially do. He's trying to set it straight. Guess what? If I have to kill somebody and send you back to nothing, if there's a reason, if there's a purpose, your ass is going straight back to nothing. If you don't pay me, guess what? Whoever doesn't pay him back, all the money that they stole and all the sins that they committed, if it's to be of high wager, if it's small stuff, it isn't going to matter. We're talking stuff that matters, big things. Things that make you, like, your teeth churn and you're like biting your lip. That's the stuff where God is going to have to say, all right, well, we're going to have to start writing down levels of punishment, and you're going to have to do certain amounts of payment to make up for this sort of behavior, because it is absolutely not going to happen, period. So in the story, God never. That's why he's been waiting forever. God has been waiting forever to bust Lucifer and set this shit straight. And he's been waiting forever to just fuck up Lucifer's plan to bankrupt everybody. And then what do you think happened? Lucifer thought he was the only person who knew how to bankrupt everybody and make people owe them and know things that other people didn't notice. And that's the biggest thing of how you put somebody into debt, is if somebody doesn't notice. And how in the hell do you think God just went to town on that guy? That stupid motherfucker didn't notice shit. Lucifer did not notice one fucking thing that God set his ass up for. Because he's all powerful, man. He fucked with the wrong guy. You fuck with that guy, dude, your ass is gone. You get your shit lit the fuck up. So guess what? God, the way God works, the way he operates, is it took him forever to figure everything out. But of course, since he always existed, therefore the equation has solved itself and is therefore true. He does, 13 billion years, figured everything out. He's setting shit straight. I'm here, the messenger. Therefore, who was it that waged war on Lucifer? Who was it? Waged war on the serpent. And there was that big ass craze that everyone was all debating and freaking the fuck out, saying, oh, that's bullshit, that's real, oh, that's not real. Jesus. You guys remember that? As soon as Jesus came down here, he waged war on the serpent, on Lucifer. Because he knew that there was going to be evidence. Because God won't do anything until there's evidence. As soon as there will be evidence, or if he knows that it will be evident and there's evidence, that's a wrap. There's a purpose, there's a reason. He's going to come get your ass. And when you're dealing with a criminal like Lucifer, you're dealing with someone who knows how to get around leaving a fingerprint and not making sure no one fucking notices anything. Because guess what? If anybody notices anything, that's his ass. And why do you think this whole time didn't nobody notice shit? Until God himself was the one who knows. Oh yeah, I noticed something right here, Lucifer. You don't think anyone is going to notice that you're going to try to bankrupt everybody? Oh bullshit, wait till you see Brian come fucking blow your shit out. And here I am. Now, it flips sides. If the event were not to occur, it doesn't matter who it was. We have billions of people. It was bound to be somebody. If somebody couldn't fucking point this motherfucker out and prove this shit and explain this shit, well then we're going to have to wait till we have enough evidence. That's all. We just needed it to be evident enough. When it's evident enough and everybody's like, hey, I agree. I'm for that. You know what? That makes sense. That's when he's going to start coming into the picture. Everybody figures it out. Everybody learns their lesson. Everyone's all sitting down here like, oh shit, I'm learning my lesson. I'm straightening my ass out, and I'm afraid to be waging war on God and destroying shit when I know that's not what he's about. So anyway, although God himself will not wage war, he can join, because it comes down to purpose or circumstance. If there are to be some sort of circumstance, game over. If he has to join a side, you better pray to God that he's on your side, because if he is not on your side, you're fucked. You're done. Your ass is grass. He's gonna wrap your shit up so fucking quick and send your ass off to fucking jail, prison, to learn your fucking lesson. You're gonna be sitting there fucking crying once he whoops your ass, and make sure you never forget. So you better watch your fucking attitude. And guess what? If two people aren't talking to each other, don't be saying nothing to each other. That's another thing he works off of. Don't be fucking talking to people if you two aren't fucking listening to each other. If I'm talking to you and you don't listen to me, and you're talking to me and I'm not listening to you, what's the point? There is no point. Alright? Alright, now another thing, like I was saying, he can join into a war and a battle if there's a purpose or a circumstance. Oh well, now there's a circumstance and there's a purpose. His son, Jesus himself, waged war. That was the only fair way to wage war on the serpent. Okay? Because God himself has an unfair advantage if he does it. So he was just waiting if there would ever be anybody who would figure out, like, dude, is anybody gonna fucking stand up and wage war against this serpent? Are you guys gonna take this from him? And then, behold, his son stood up and finally waged war upon the serpent. And the way it works is God himself will not wage war because he knows he has an unfair advantage. But that the same thing goes for Lucifer, and that's the whole principle that God ties Lucifer to. That principle is of, you know what, Lucifer? you have an unfair advantage to wage war on anybody else. Therefore, you shall not be allowed. You are not allowed to wage war on anybody or anything else because he has an unfair advantage. So Lucifer knows that. He knows, okay, he has an unfair advantage to go waging war on everybody and everything. Same with God. Well, God has an unfair advantage if he goes away. That's how he had to balance the equation and make it fair. So he's like, you know what? If I wage the war, it's not fair. Your ass is a wrap. If anybody else wages the war, I'm going to choose a side, and I'm going to fucking come fight the battle with whoever the fuck I choose to join sides with. And behold, his son came down and waged the war and was like, yeah, you guys better get ready because God's on my side. He's about to light your asses up. Oh, well, I hope y'all, I'll see y'all on Judgment Day, guys. I'll see you guys real soon.